Hi, and welcome to episode 100 of Noble Character Crafts. My name is Amy, and I am coming to you from eastern Nebraska, where I live with my husband and our 5 children. Today is Friday, August 28th, 2020. This channel is all about my crafty life, and today I have knitting and embroidery to share with you all, as well as a special question and answer section to celebrate my 100th episode. A huge welcome to any new or returning viewers. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that you really enjoyed this episode. You can find me online on Instagram at Noble Character Crafts, and you can also get in contact with me through my email at noblecharactercrafts@yahoo.com. I will have links to the places that you can find me in the description box below, as well as the show notes for this episode. I am currently hosting a year-long make-along over on Instagram, which is called the Make 9 2020 Mal, and that is for you to join in on the Make 9 challenge, where you choose 9 projects that you would like to make within the year 2020, make a grid of those 9 projects, and post that onto Instagram with the hashtag Make92020, and then, Make92020 Mal, and then whenever you post a picture of your progress or any of your finished objects from your list, you can certainly also include that hashtag, and anytime you post anything on Instagram with the hashtag, then that will enter you in to win a prize, which I am drawing randomly throughout the year, periodically. So you can certainly continue to join in. It is not required that you finish any or all of the things on your list. It's just a participatory make-along, and so if you want to join in still, you certainly can. WIPs are included, and any craft is also included. So I'd love it if you would still like to join in, and thanks so much to everyone who has already joined in. It's so much fun to see all of the different projects you all are working on. I was able to finish a new project from my Make 9, one of my Make 9 lists. I actually made 2 Make 9 lists, one for my personal projects and one as a gift list. And these socks I was able to finish from my gift list. So these gorgeous socks are the Whispers in the Wind pattern by Crazy Sock Lady Designs. And I have knit these using my own hand-dyed yarn in the Light of Dawn colorway, and it's on a gold stellina base, which you probably can't see the sparkle in very well on camera, but it does have a bit of gold stellina in there. It's fingering weight, so 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and 5% gold stellina. I knit these on US 1 2.25 millimeter needles, and these are a gift for my friend Tina. I knit the medium size, so 64 stitches. These are knit cuff down. Last time I recorded, I was just about done with the heel flap, so these I made along with the Sock Week 2020 make-along that Natalie of Knitty Natty was hosting, where she was challenging people to try to make one sock within 8 days, and I was actually able to knit the pair. I knit them 2 at a time. So I was able to knit the pair in only 5 days, which I was so happy about. I have knit another pair of socks pretty quickly before, but they were a bit shorter. So this is more of the normal length of sock that I like to make for myself. And so I was curious to see how quickly I could do them. I wasn't trying to really, overdo it, but I just put down all my other WIPs, and I only worked on these socks for those 5 days until I got them completed. So I was really happy to be able to do them so quickly. And I think that this is the 7th project off of that Make 9 gift list that I have completed. So I only have 2 more. I have 2 pairs of colorwork mittens on that gift list that I have yet to make. So I'm really happy with my progress on that Make 9 list. It's doing a bit better than my personal Make 9 list, but that's okay. Anyway, I'm really happy with these. I followed the pattern exactly for everything except, no, I did. There was no changes. I followed the pattern exactly. It was a super fun pattern. I love the twisted stitch in the pattern right there. You can see one of them. It was such or it's like a cross stitch, I guess I should say. It was such a fun pattern. Kay's sock patterns are definitely my favorites. I have knit several of her patterns, and her heel and toe pattern is my go-to for just a standard sock for myself. I usually just follow her patterns for the heel and toe, even if I'm not making one of her patterns. So I really am a huge fan and love this pattern as well. It was the first time I've made this pattern, but I can definitely see myself making another one of this pattern again, because it was really a fun pattern to work up. And I love how they turned out. I think they're so pretty. So Tina, these will be off to you next time I see you, which will hopefully be soon. And then last time I recorded an episode, I mentioned that I really didn't have another mindless project to work on, and that was a problem. I needed to have another project. So I did cast on another pair of socks, and I was able to already finish them. These are just a pair for myself. And these I also knit from the top down. Again, I used 64 stitches. Again, I used US 1 2.25 millimeter needles. And the yarn I used for these, the main color is Knit Picks Felici. This yarn I also received from Adriana, a viewer of the podcast. So thank you again, Adriana, for your gifts. I am really enjoying working through the yarn that you sent me quite a while ago. So that's so much fun. The pattern that the Knit Picks colorway is called Endless Summer, which I thought was a fitting time of the year for me to be making them now in the end of August. And the heel and toe contrast color is from Stranded Dyeworks, and it's in the Fear Street colorway. Both of those are a 75 superwash merino wool, 25% nylon base, fingering weight. The pattern that I used is a new to me pattern. It's called Slipped Up Socks by All Knit Up Designs, which is a free pattern on her blog, which I will link to in the description box below. And it was such a fun, whenever you change a color, then you do a few rows of slip stitches, which just makes this really fun but mindless pattern. And I loved working on it. I did find a couple of times when I got to a row where I needed to slip the stitches, but maybe the color change was mid-row, halfway through the front of the sock, I was supposed to be slipping stitches. At first, I tried to just start slipping stitches whenever the color changed, even if it was mid-row, but then it ended up that the slip stitches were kind of askew, half of the row was higher than the other half. So instead I found that it was best to start doing the slip stitch pattern right before the color change if need be. My favorite was when the color change happened on the back of the sock, because as you can see, that does not have the slip stitch pattern. That's just work in plain stockinette. But so that worked out perfectly if the color change was on the back, and then I could just start the slip stitch pattern on the front. But if the color change happened on the front of the sock, I erred on the side of starting that slip stitch pattern a little earlier than the color change, and that looks better. For the cuff, I did a 2x2 rib for, I think it was only about 17 rows. I just did 3 stripes. As soon as the 3 stripes were up, then I started doing the pattern for the sock. I also did not follow the pattern for the heel and the toe. Again, I followed Kay's pattern like I mentioned. So yeah, I'm really happy with how these turned out. These worked up pretty quickly as well. I did not work on these solely, though. I did work on other projects at the same time as these, so they took me a little bit longer, but still I was able to make them pretty quickly. I did again add a slip stitch detail to the ball of the foot, which I think this is the 3rd time I've done that on a pair of socks for myself, and it's still an experiment because I haven't been wearing my hand knit socks yet this summer. I'll probably be wearing them soon in the next few months, of course, but I have just started adding a slip stitch detail to the sole or the ball of my foot, because I tend to wear a hole in my socks in the ball of my foot most quickly. And so I'm hopeful that that will, help it to wear a little bit longer. The hole won't be formed as quickly is my hope. So I just try it on, and I did it for about 3.5 stripes, I guess. So I don't know how many rows that was. I didn't count. I just tried it on, and when I got to the ball of my foot, I started doing the slip stitch section. So I just slip knit for 1 row, and then knit the next row and alternate between those 2, just like you would on the heel flap. Super happy with those, and I love this pattern. I'll definitely be using that again too, because It's such a fun mindless pattern, and I love it when I can find a nice pattern to go with self-striping yarn, because I have quite a bit of Knit Picks Felici that would work great for this pattern. So the sock blockers, I should probably mention, these with the cats on them are from Perfectly Catchy Designs, and then these with the lambs or the sheep on them are from the Loopy U. So I will link to those shops in the description box below too, in case you're interested in either of those types of sock blockers. The ones from Perfectly Catchy Designs, they have tons of different designs for sock blockers, so there's lots of options. I don't know that there are any other options from the Loopy U, but these are both great high quality sock blockers. My last finished object that I'm so excited about is my very first embroidery project. So this little kit I picked up from Walmart, but I do know that you can also order it online. And I also saw this kit at Hobby Lobby. It is from Leisure Arts, and this one is named Blush Roses, but at Hobby Lobby it had a different name, but it was the same exact pattern. You can see that I did change up the colors. Oh, I'm having it the wrong way. Oh, that's funny. I thought I mounted it the right way, but it's different, isn't it? It doesn't really matter. Oh well. You probably can't tell. It's not that noticeable. But anyway, the rosy, here, I'll hold it this way so you can see it. The rosy, like the purplish colored roses on the sample, I changed to this peach color, because in the actual kit, that color was not that purplish color that I liked, but it was this bright red. And though I love this bright red too, it's beautiful, I just didn't want that for my project. So I just decided to borrow this peach color from another kit that I bought, and I love it. So I love how those colors look together. Again, this is my very first embroidery project, so it's definitely not perfect, but I'm still so proud of it. I started off with these satin stitches for the leaves in the background, and then these roses, I forget now what that's called. Pinwheel? No, wagon wheel. Woven wheel. They're called woven wheel stitches, and then the little white parts are French knots, which I mentioned that I had tried French knots a long time ago and they were a struggle. It was a lot easier this time, but still there were a few that are a little bit wonky looking, but that's okay. Overall, I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. I just finished off the back, as the instructions said, to kind of trim down the fabric and then run a piece of the extra yarn or thread through the, you know, like about a 1/2 inch from the edge, and cinch that up. So that worked. And I'll just be hanging this. I'm not sure where I'm going to be hanging it. I do have another one that's a little bit larger that I bought also, another kit. And so I am planning to make that at some point, and then maybe I'll group them with this doily up on the wall somehow, but this one's a lot smaller than that big doily on the wall, and so I'm not sure where I'll hang this in the meantime, because I think it'll be a little odd just to have this one little one by that big one. Anyway, we'll see. I'm not sure where I'll put it, but I really am happy with how it turned out. Look at all of this extra thread that I have. That's why I was confident in borrowing the peach colored thread from the other kit, because I have so much extra of this thread from this kit. So I'm assuming and hoping that that other kit will have plenty of extra as well. Okay, on to works in progress. I only have 2 that I'm going to share with you. I have a few other works in progress, but I haven't worked on them very, like maybe just a row or 2, but not enough to show any progress on. The first one is in this beautiful bag that I received from Trisha of Joy in the Stitches, and this is the project that I've been putting the most attention into. It is another project from my personal Make 9 list. It is called the Ladies Autumn Whirlpool Sweater, which is a beautiful design by Natalie Pelykh. And I'm so excited about this project. The last time I recorded, I was way up there where that progress keeper is marking, and I was working my way through this cabled yoke section. I decided to add beading to this project. So the beading was not in the original pattern. I just added them in whenever I thought it would be a good placement for them. And admittedly, they are not placed perfectly. This is only the second project that, well, I have 2 projects on the go right now that I'm adding beading to, but I've only finished one other beaded project before. So I don't have a ton of experience with adding beading to my knitting, but I really wanted to make a sweater with some beading in the yoke area. And anyway, I'm super happy with it, even though if I were to go back and do it again, I would probably move some of the beads a little bit. But I'm super happy with how it's turning out so far. I'm using yarn that I dyed myself in this deep wine colorway. It comes across on camera a little different than in person. In person, it's more of a purple color than this. On camera, it looks more of like, almost like it's more red on camera than it is in person. Anyway, I'm just so pleased with how this is turning out. It is knit at a super fine gauge. This is fingering weight yarn. I used a 100% non-superwash base, merino wool, and it's fingering weight. And the original pattern calls for you to knit this at 30 stitches to 4 inches. My gauge is looser than that, at between 27 to 28 stitches to 4 inches, even though I'm using a US 1 2.25 millimeter needle for this project. And for the ribbing, I'm using a 000 1.5 millimeter needles. So anyway, I have never knit a garment at such a fine gauge. And again, I'm still looser than I'm supposed to be. It's crazy. So anyway, it's, quite a long process, but I'm super excited about it. Okay, so obviously it's knit top down, and the cabling and the beading goes all the way around, which I just think is so pretty. I'm so happy with it. So I've obviously split for the sleeves, and I'm knitting down into the body here. There are some decreases, some bust darts, she calls them in the pattern, along the sides here, and I've just finished those. The pattern calls for you to start doing some increases now for the hip shaping, but I wonder, I don't know that I counted my row gauge. I wonder if my row gauge is a little bit shorter than hers, because I'm not even past my bust line yet, and it's already calling for you to start the hip shaping, so I don't know. But I guess I could try it on, because I can try it on. I've got it right now. I just had switched it to two sets of needles so that I can try it on, because normally I'm just doing it on one set so that I can work in the round. I love the neckline, how close fitting it is. I just think it's really flattering, and it'll be so nice and cozy, I think. And I love how the yoke turned out. It's so pretty. I'm so happy with it. Anyway, so you can see I'm still got a little ways to go. I am going to crop it though. Per usual, I tend to crop my sweaters, and so I will be, putting the waistband or the ribbing along my natural waistline, I think. And then I will be probably modifying the sleeves a bit too, because I like to knit my sleeves without any decreases. So I think I'll probably be doing that again too. I just knit them straight until I get to the cuff, and then I do a rapid decrease. And I really like the fit of that construction of a sleeve, and so I'll probably be doing that again as well. But yeah, I'm super excited about this, and I'm planning to continue focusing on this project. I really want to get this done before fall. So I'm gonna take this off again. It's super hot here. I think it's supposed to get up to, if not really close to 100 again today. It's been like that all week, I think. Anyway, I am doing a helical knitting for this project, which is the first time that I've tried that method, so that I can alternate the skeins of yarn. These were all of the skeins, I dyed, I think 4, and I put them all in the same pot together when I dyed them, but still I thought it would be best to try to alternate them. So with helical knitting, I can alternate every row I'm changing yarn so that, it disperses the color most evenly. That's always recommended with hand-dyed yarn. So I watched a few tutorials. The one that I found most helpful was Natalie of Knitty Natty's tutorial on helical knitting. That she just did a nice job of explaining how to do that really clearly, and that helped me to understand the best way to do this type of knitting, and it's working out really well. So the idea is that you knit to just 3 stitches before your other yarn joining, where your other yarn is joined, and then you slip those 3 stitches that are in between, and then you change the color. And that way your the place where you're switching yarns is always rotating a little bit around your work, and so you're never changing yarn at the same exact point. So here is my beginning of round on this side, and I have found it helpful to mark the spot where I am changing for the helical knitting, and my marker for that is right here. So I have already worked the join has already worked its way almost all the way around the circumference of the body of the sweater to get back to this beginning of round spot again. So it's pretty incredible how quickly that goes all the way around. I mean, I've only knit, I don't know, 6-7 inches since I started the helical knitting, because I didn't start that until after I was done with the cabling. And there's so many stitches on this sweater. I forget what it is now. I think it's 200 and something right now. It was 440 when I finished the yoke. That was so crazy to have that many stitches on the needles for a sweater. I think right now I have 276 stitches on the needles. Since my gauge is different, I went down in a size. So I'm knitting the 4th size, which is a size 38. I would normally probably go up to the 5th size, which would be a size 40 to have a little bit of ease. But since my gauge is looser than the original pattern calls for, I went down a size in the sweater so that I would get about the same fit as I would normally want. That was my hope, and it seems to be working out. I'm happy with how it's fitting. It's not too tight, but it's not too loose either. It's a nice, comfortable fit. So anyway, I'm super excited about this project. It's going well, but it is a bit of a slow process. Okay, my only other project that I'm going to show today is another pair of mindless socks. So I have them held in this cute little tucked woolens bag. And on here I have a little pin of little 14-week-old baby feet. So that's the size of a 14-week-old in utero. And I am knitting some socks using some Patons Kroy yarn that I have had on hand for years. I've had this yarn in my stash for a long time. And it's so pretty. I'm so happy to be using it. Patons Kroy socks in the brown rose marl colorway. This is a 75-25 blend as well. 75 washable wool and 25% nylon. And fingering weight. So I really love the colors in this yarn. And these socks are just super mindless. I did, again, 64 stitches. I did a 2x2 rib for 20 rows. And now I've just switched to a 3x1 rib that I'll be doing for the entirety of the sock. Again, I'm knitting these 2 at a time. That's my favorite way to knit socks. And US 1 2.25 millimeter needles. So these will be for myself as well, I think. I really love Patons Kroy socks, or Patons Kroy yarn. It is similar to like Regia or Opal, I think. That it's just a really hardy wearing sock yarn. So I really am enjoying these, and I love the marled look of this yarn as well. So those are a very simple, easy project that I don't have to think about, and they're easy to take with me if I'm ever going anywhere. So that's perfect to have for an on-the-go project. I did want to show just a few things that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, just because I'm not sure if the sale is still going on, but they were having a sale on some of their yarns. And so I picked up a few more skeins of Patons Kroy, and they were on sale for such a good deal. So I just wanted to share in case any of you can take advantage of that sale. These are originally $7.99 and they were reduced to $1.99. So I got the Woodsy colorway. I got Cameo Colors, which I think that one is so gorgeous. Love those colors. Kind of goes with my dress a little bit. And I got Turquoise Jacquard, which is also really a pretty colorway. And again, all those are $1.99 a skein. And then I also cleaned off their shelf of the plain white, or it's called muslin, but it's just a bare yarn of the Patons Kroy. They only had 3 left, and I grabbed all 3 of them because they're just so perfect for heels, cuffs, and toes, or anything. And for $1.99 a skein, I just couldn't pass that up. And then I also got 2 skeins of this yarn, which was only 99 cents a skein. So crazy. Originally it's $3.99. And this is Baby Bee Soft and Sleek Baby Low Pill Fiber. It is 100% acrylic, but it's super, super soft. 100% low pill acrylic, it says. It's a worsted weight. And this color is called Seafoam Marled. And I just thought it was so pretty. Oh, it's a little bright there. That's better. I thought it would make a really nice baby cardigan, or even like a set with maybe a hat or booties or something like that. These are the only 2 that they had of this yarn that at the shop where I was anyway. But anyway, I thought those were super cute and would make a great baby gift. So I just wanted to let you all know about that, in case, I'm not sure, like I said, how long that sale is going to be going on, but I thought it was such a good deal, I couldn't pass it up. I just stumbled across it too. I had no idea that there was going to be that sale, but I saw it and I was like, what? That's ridiculous. Had to take advantage of it. All right, I'm going to get into the questions that I received. There were so many questions that you all entered to win the prize, which I will be announcing in just a minute when I get to the question that won. I'm not going to be able to get through all of the questions today. I did go through all of the questions and I sorted them. There were quite a few repeat questions. And so I've kind of organized them into different categories. And today I'm just going to be going over the questions that addressed my crafting and also yarn dyeing. So I have saved all the other questions though, and I'm going to try to work my way through those little by little in the upcoming episodes. So if you asked a question that I don't get to today, I'll certainly try to get to it as soon as possible. And I just want to thank everybody so much for entering this giveaway and for asking me so many nice questions. It's really fun to see all of the questions that you all submitted. Now, again, I did have a lot of repeat questions, so I've written down the questions on little cards so that I can go through them. But if you don't hear your question verbatim, it's probably because it was very similar to somebody else's question, and I'm just trying to condense the questions. So anyway, I'll go through my craft related questions first. How many years have you been knitting and crocheting? So I've been crocheting a lot longer than I have been knitting. I learned how to crochet when I was in college. I lived in a dorm, and just 2 doors down from my room was a lady that taught me or a girl I should say, that taught me how to crochet. Her name was Ellen, and she was crocheting and I wanted to learn. My grandmother crocheted, which is actually one of the other questions coming up. But I never learned how to crochet from her. She never even tried to teach me. I think maybe she just wasn't a teacher. I'm not sure. She never even tried. I don't think I ever asked her. There was just no mention of trying to learn how to crochet from her. But anyway, I did learn before she passed away, and so I was able to show her that I was crocheting, which she was super excited about, so that was fun. Anyway, so that was when I was 20 years old, so that's been 20 years now since I've learned, almost 21 years since I learned how to crochet. I just learned how to knit back in 2017, so I've only been knitting for a little over 3 years, and I learned that from watching YouTube videos by Peony and Time. Anya is the gal that has that YouTube channel, and she had some videos on her channel showing how to knit, and so that's how I learned how to knit. Now on those videos she learned the English style, and since I was crocheting for so many years, it was a lot easier for me to knit using continental style, which is what I use. So I did modify that, but I actually got the technique of how to knit from those YouTube videos. So, and then another question is, does your mother or grandmother knit? My mother does not knit. My paternal grandmother only crocheted. She did not knit. So next is, what's your favorite item or project that you ever made? I think this was the most repeat question, the question that was asked most frequently. And I'm so sorry, but I can't answer it. I've tried to think of what is my favorite and I just can't pick. I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't. I mean, really the projects that come to my mind are the ones that I'm working on right now. So maybe that means I'm a process knitter. I never have really been able to figure out if I'm a process or a project knitter, meaning do I find more joy in the process of knitting or do I find more joy in the actual finished project? Maybe that means I'm a process knitter because the things that come to mind are like my Hexie scrappy blanket, this beaded cabled sweater. I'm super excited about that. The shawls that I'm working on. I've got 2 shawls that I'm working on but haven't touched these last few weeks, but I'm really excited about those. So I don't know. I can't pick one that's already finished. I mean, there's so many that I love and I use all the time, but there's not one that stands out above another, I guess. So sorry about that. Which are your most worn garments and where do you store your knitwear and gorgeous blankets? So my most worn garments are probably my solid colored cardigans, I think. I have several of them. I have one that's gold, one that's pinkish, peachy colored. I have like a rusty orange colored one, green. I might have more than that. I have a deep purple one, but that does have some color work on it, but it's pretty neutral. It goes with a lot of stuff. So I think that those solid cardigans, solid colored cardigans are the garments that I wear most often. I store my garments in my closet up on a top shelf right behind me here, and I keep them in large Ziploc bags, like they're huge, large Ziploc bags. And that works really well to keep away moths because I'm paranoid about moths getting into my things. And my blankets are kept mainly in our living room. I don't have a good place to store them right now. I really want my husband to make me a blanket ladder so that I can hang my blankets over the ladder. But right now we just fold them and put them on the couches, and honestly they end up falling off of the couches a lot of times. But I would really like to get a blanket ladder. In fact, I was just looking online for one this morning again, but I can't find a blanket ladder that is a reasonable price for one for the quality that it looks like. I mean, it just looks like super, super simple to make for like $40 or $50. And I'm like, I don't see the point in paying that much for a simple constructed ladder that my husband I know could make. I mean, I could make it too, but I might need a little assistance. I'm not much of a woodworker. Anyway, are all your children crafty too? No. I mean, they're crafty in their own little way, but nobody else is a knitter or a crocheter. My kids like to do artwork. They like to paint. My daughter really enjoys playing with beads and things like that. I have taught my daughter how to knit. I think the same year that I learned how to knit, I taught her how to knit, and she was doing really well there for a while, but then she hasn't kept up practicing it and she has forgotten it and really doesn't have much of an interest. Once in a while, my children will ask me to teach them how to knit or crochet, and I'll do it for like a little bit until they lose interest, but nothing's stuck yet. So, and then along those lines, somebody asked if they have an interest in learning. So I kind of already answered that. Once in a while they do, but it hasn't stuck yet. So we'll see down the road if it does stick. Who are your top 5 knitting and crochet designers? So it won't be any surprise to you that, as I mentioned, Crazy Sock Lady Designs is definitely one of my favorites. I've knit so many of her patterns, and I was counting through how many of her patterns I've made, and I think it's almost half of her sock designs I've done. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to try to make all of her sock patterns at some point, but we'll see. Anyway, I've also made several of Tabitha Gandy's patterns. Andrea Mowry is another one that I just kind of looked through my projects and saw who have I gone back to over and over again. I've made a couple of Andrea Mowry's patterns. Stephen West is definitely one of my favorites for shawls. I have one of his shawl books, and I would love to go through and knit the majority of the shawls in that book as well. And also Joji Locatelli. I have only made 2 of her designs. Both of them were shawls, but I do have hopes to knit one of her sweater designs as well, and hopefully in the next year or so. Which project have you made that gave you the most joy as you worked on it? And I can't think of one particular one. Well, I can, but mainly gifts. Anytime I'm making a gift for somebody, that's what I find the most joy in. I just love gift knitting, and especially if I'm confident that they're going to enjoy it and treasure that project, I love working on it. So the one specifically that I thought of was my friend Tina's shawl that I made for her, and actually Tina was the one that asked this question, so it's very fitting. But I made her a night shift shawl, and I thoroughly enjoyed the process of that, and she does treasure that shawl. She keeps it always draped over her chair in her living room and covers up with it whenever she needs it, and she just loves it, and so that just warms my heart. And I just love the process of making things for friends and family. I love the process of being able to think about them and pray for them as I'm knitting the project, and it's just what I find the most joy in. Have you ever lost your crafting mojo? No, and I hope I don't ever, especially not since I learned how to knit. Prior to learning how to knit, I loved crocheting, and I crocheted pretty much constantly ever since I've learned. I haven't probably done it every day for, now I never go without knitting or crocheting in a given day. There's never a day that I go without knitting or crocheting for at least an hour or more. There probably was when I was younger, I didn't crochet every day after I learned, but I've never really lost my crafting mojo. I've always had a project, at least one project on the go at all times, and that sounds horrible. I hope it never happens to me. What was the first item you ever knit? The first item that I ever completed was a triangle scarf or triangle shawl using super bulky weight yarn, and I gifted that to my niece. I will insert a picture of it here. It was a design by Destiny of Nifty Knittings. And it was perfect because it was such a bulky weight yarn. It was knit on super bulky needles, or super, big needles. And so it just worked up so quickly. I recommend that for a new beginner project, working with bulky yarn and big needles, because it's so much easier to see your stitches, I think. So, and it was a super easy garter stitch pattern with simple increases on the sides, I think. So yeah, it was a great first project. What is your favorite pattern to crochet or knit? I guess that's kind of a tricky one, but what comes to mind is a granny square. So that would be a crocheted project, of course. I've just made so many different crocheted blankets using the granny square pattern in some form or another, whether I make tiny little squares and join them all together, or as you saw in my last episode, I made one huge granny square for my brother-in-law's family. So that's a pattern that I've just gone back to over and over again for baby blankets, and even for like coasters and pot holders, and it's just such a versatile pattern. It's obviously super mindless, and it can be, with the change in colors, you can make it in one solid color, you can change every row the colors, you can play with the colors and the patterns so much. It's so much fun to work with that pattern. Do you have a certain yarn that you keep going back to? I would say Knit Picks. Anything from Knit Picks is a pretty standard in my stash. It's just a really good quality yarn at a super affordable price. So I find myself going back to Knit Picks brand in many different bases over and over again. What are your favorite quick gifts to make? Dishcloths, I would say. Most people really enjoy hand knit dishcloths. They are super quick to make, and you might be able to see back there, I have a basket that is filled with ready-to-go dishcloths that I have made, and I've used up almost all of my cotton yarn to make dishcloths so that they're ready to go for gifts, and I really enjoy being able to give those away. They're usually really well received. How do you store your yarn stash? So I have this cabinet right back here, and there's a shelf that is about that big at the top, and then there's another shelf and a bottom shelf. So I have the majority of my yarn is on the top shelf here. It's not very beautifully displayed. I just keep it all in plastic bags like this. So these are bags that I get bed sheets in typically. So I think I've gotten a lot of these kinds of bags from my mom as well, because she knows I like to store my yarn in them. And so I just sort my yarn in like categories. So this, again, is pretty much full of Knit Picks palette that I love using for colorwork mittens, or I have knit a sweater in Knit Picks palette, but I wasn't really happy with how that wore because it was made at such a loose gauge. But I love Knit Picks palette for colorwork mittens or anything colorwork really. It is a 100% Peruvian Highland wool, so it's perfect for that. There are a few other brands down here at the bottom that I have gotten for really inexpensively at thrift shops. You can see there, these two were both 50 cents. So anyway, I tried to sort them. So these are all fingering weight. They're all 100% wool, perfect for color work. Or here is another bag that I have filled with lots of Knit Picks Felici. There's a couple of Patons Kroy yarns in there as well. And these are all yarns that I have 2 skeins of, so they're perfect for making socks 2 at a time. But yeah, I just have them all sorted so that they're ready to go. And that's pretty much how I do it for all of my yarn. I sort it by they're all the same weight or they're similar. These are all 75-25 blends. So they're all sorted in that way and then put into that cupboard. Is there a design that you really love and want to make, but you're intimidated by it? I can't think of anything except for the project that I have on my needles. I'll go grab it. I referenced it a few times, so I might as well go ahead and show it. This is the Das Macabre shawl that is by Boo Knits. It is a lace weight shawl that also has beading on it. And again, I've made about an inch of progress since I showed it last. So there's a progress keeper right where I have that lifeline inserted is where I was last time I showed it off on the podcast. But this is the project that comes to mind when I think of a project that intimidates me. Even now when I think about this, I'm like, it just makes me nervous a little bit when I work on this just because I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. But that's why I have continued to keep that lifeline in there and move it every time. In fact, the last time I worked on this, I messed up and I had to tink back about 1.5 rows. And I haven't picked it up since I did that because it was just like, so stressful. So anyway, this is the project that comes to mind when I think of that question. But I'm not going to shy away from it. I am going to get back to it. It's just a matter of time. So anyway, there's been a few things that have intimidated me. That's the next question. What are the techniques that you were afraid of trying but found so easy when you did it? And the techniques that come to mind for that question are brioche and color work. Both of those techniques, even brioche now, I've done a few different brioche projects, but even now when I think about brioche, it is a little bit intimidating still, even though it's really, really not that hard. And I've said that before, it's really not that hard. There's no special technique. It's just yarn overs, knits, and purls. And so it's not hard. It's just a different technique. And brioche is a bit harder to correct if you do make a mistake, but it's not impossible. And I have fixed my brioche mistakes before by rewatching YouTube videos that teach you how to do that. But anyway, color work was a bit harder for me to catch on to as far as the gauge. I remember the first time I made a pair of color work mittens, I had to redo them, I think 3 or 4 times before I got a good fit. It's definitely a process of learning how to do the color work in a consistent way so that your gauge is consistent. And I definitely have not perfected that yet, but I'm not afraid of color work anymore. I really enjoy color work. What is the hardest project you've ever made? I think that the Raouli shawl that I finished a few months ago was probably the hardest project I've ever made. That was an all-over brioche project that I gifted to my friend from church, and that's the one that comes to mind just because there wasn't a lot of rest in that project. There were a few rows where you didn't really have to think about what you were doing, but it was pretty intense to have an all-over brioche project like that. What kind of project is your favorite to be working on? Shawls and blankets. Those are my favorites. I guess I just like a big area where I can play with color and patterns. Those are my favorites. And they're usually pretty long projects. So I guess I kind of like, maybe that's another reason why maybe I'm a process knitter, because I just like a project that lasts a long time. Is there a knitting or crocheting technique that you have not tried yet but are longing to? I would be interested in learning how to do double knitting. I haven't found a project that I am super in love with and want to make yet that involves double knitting, but I'm just curious and intrigued by that technique of knitting, so I would like to learn that. And I also have never finished a project using Tunisian crochet. I've done like a little swatch using Tunisian crochet stitches and I enjoyed it. But now that I know how to knit, I feel like Tunisian crochet was something that I was interested in when I didn't know how to knit, and it kind of replicates knitting. So again, I haven't really found a pattern that requires me to do Tunisian crochet that I'm anxious to make, but it is something that I would love to learn someday. Have you ever tried macrame? No, I haven't, but that is something that I really admire as well. So I would love to try that someday as well. Is there a craft that you have always wanted to try but haven't had a chance to delve into? I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago that I would love to try spinning someday. I'm really not interested in trying to spin on a Turkish spindle where you like hang it, because I think that it would be really uncomfortable for me. I have a lot of neck pain and I don't think that I would be a huge fan of that, but I would love to try to learn how to spin on a spinning wheel. What podcasts do you watch? Hundreds. I should go through and count how many podcasts I am subscribed to, but that's like the main thing that I have as entertainment in my life is watching knitting and crochet podcasts on YouTube. So a few, I just have listed the ones that, I'm subscribed to so many and I love so many of them, but I'm just going to tell you the ones that I watch as soon as I see a new episode from them. They go to the top of my list to watch. So those are Crazy Sock Lady, Anna Knitter, Meanwhile at the Castle, A Homespun House, and Stitching Over the Days. Also, I love the Hey Sister podcast, but they haven't recorded an episode in so long. I sure hope that they do again sometime soon. What are your favorite things about crafting? So I guess I just love, probably pretty obvious, I just love the creative process. I love being able to make something out of nothing. You're pretty much making something out of this tangled up mess of yarn. I love being able to modify patterns to make them my own. I love picking my own colors and getting things to fit just how I like them. So I love being able to have control over what I'm making and put my own spin onto things a lot of times. Have you ever been discouraged by a pattern when you had high hopes for it? I think of the outline shawl that I recently finished. It's a free pattern, beautiful free pattern by Beta Gizek. And the reason why I say that is just because it was the second time that I tried knitting that pattern. The first time I tried knitting it, I was really not happy with how it was turning out with the colors that I had chosen. And so I ripped it out, and then I did it again this year as part of my Make 9 list. And I really enjoyed the process of making that, but I don't think that I will be using, I don't know, maybe I'll surprise myself, but I don't know that I'm gonna love wearing it just because the colors are so crazy, because I did a rainbow. I just don't know if I'm gonna wear it very much. I don't know. I'll insert a picture of it here so you can see it if you're not familiar with what I made, but I don't know. We'll see how much use I get out of it this winter, but I don't know. I'm a little disappointed in how, I don't know. I mean, I guess I just don't think I'm going to get as much use out of it as I had originally thought. If you were still dyeing yarn and could collaborate with a designer, who would it be and why? I guess it would be any one of those designers that I said before that I really go back to over and over again. But there are many designers that I really admire that I did not list in that list, but yeah, I would, any of those designers that I listed off before as some of my favorites, I would love to collaborate with them sometime. That would be awesome. If you could visit any yarn shop and buy any yarn, where would you go and what yarn would you buy? I would love to travel to Paris and visit La Bien Aimée and buy that yarn. I really love the yarn that I have seen from La Bien Aimée. I've never knit with any of it except for a few samples. I feel like I just used some in something. Oh, in my hexie blanket. I believe I got a little ball of La Bien Aimée from Tiffany of the Woolen Homestead when we did a swap last year. And I've been putting that into my hexie blanket lately. But I would love to visit Paris just because that sounds wonderful. So I'm thinking maybe when our kids are grown, maybe my husband and I will travel. We'll see. My husband's never left the United States and doesn't really seem to have much of an interest in doing so, but maybe he'll change his mind when he gets older. We'll see. How did you wash and dry the big and heavy crochet blanket? So I will insert a picture of it here in case you did not tune into my last episode, but I did make this 6 foot long and wide blanket for my brother-in-law's family made out of worsted weight yarn. I have a pretty big washing machine. Since we have 5 kids, I do a lot of laundry, and so we got an industrial sized, I think it's like a heavy duty washing machine. It's not your standard one, so it's a little bit bigger than a standard washing machine, you know, like the drum area. And so I could just fit it in there. I have this enormous king size, like it's bigger than a king size comforter that's pretty thick, and I can shove that thing in the washing machine as well. So I just put it in there with regular laundry detergent. I washed it on cold and a delicate cycle, and then I just actually hung it over my bed here because we have a king size bed, and so I just draped it over the bed until it was dry, which we have a ceiling fan right over our bed, and we also have another really strong fan that blows into this room because this room actually does not have central air. It's just connected to the rest of the house, which does have central air, so we kind of use that fan to pump the cooler air in here. Anyway, I just laid it on there and it was dry in like 12 hours or something like that. I did it in the morning, and by the time I went to bed, it was already dry. So it worked out wonderfully. And I did get that mailed off. It was a little pricey to get it mailed off because it was pretty heavy, but that's okay. How do you choose which project to work on when you have so many whips? That really changes. Sometimes I work on, like sometimes I'll have 3 or 4 different projects going on and I'll try to work on each of them every day. But then I just get into different moods. Like especially if I can see the end of a project, I really try to focus on getting it done. Right now I'm really focused on that sweater just because I know it's going to be a long process if I don't work on it every day. And so I really just want to stay focused on that one right now. But it really changes. I mean, I do what I want and I just work on what I'm interested in, or sometimes I get into the mindset of wanting to work on one specific thing I try to focus on one specific thing sometimes. Which is your favorite craft? Pick one, knit or crochet. I have to pick knitting, which is so surprising to me. Like I said, I've crocheted for so many more years, but I find so much joy and I just really, really love knitting. I can knit without looking. I can crochet without looking sometimes too, but not as easily. Depends on the pattern. I can do a granny square without looking, I guess. But anyway, knitting is just, I don't know, it's almost easier for me now. There are crochet patterns that I can look at and be totally confused by still, but I can usually figure out a knitting pattern so far anyway. Which seems so strange to me because I've knit for so much less time than I've crocheted, but I prefer knitting. How did your projects do at the county fair? So I submitted, I think, 17 projects to the county fair, and the way that works is that it's basically like a grading system. So you get a first place prize if your project meets, a high level of standards. You get a second place prize if there's something wrong with your project typically. So it's kind of like an A or a B, you know, like it's still good if you get a second prize, but it's not 100% or whatever. So there can be, you can there could be 5 different entries for hand knit socks, and they could all get first place because they're all at a high standard. Or they could all get second place and nobody could get a first place prize for the hand knit socks, which I was confused by when I first started entering projects into the county fair. I thought that there was only going to be one person that got first place and so forth, you know, they would be judged like that. But it's not like that. Anyway, so all of my projects got either first or second prize, which was so wonderful. That was great. And typically in the needlework area, they always put a note on the back of each card that tells you what they thought of your project, which is so nice. But in past years, when I've gotten second place on a project, I feel like they've always said something, you know, constructive criticism as to why it got a second place prize. There were several of my projects that I got a second place prize on, but they had only positive feedback to leave me. So I was like, well, it's fine, but I would kind of like to know why it didn't get first place. What did you see in it that needed to be fixed? I would just like to know for my own personal, you know, knowledge to know what I could work on. Especially, there were 2 items that got a special prize. I'll insert pictures again. The first one was the Centaria. Now I forget how to pronounce that again. I think I'm wrong on that. But anyway, it was a test knit that I did for Audrey Borrego, and that sweater got a second place prize. But it won best sweater entry overall. So maybe it was the only sweater that was entered. I'm not 100% sure. I don't really remember. I did look at the other entries, but I don't remember seeing another sweater. So I think maybe it was the only sweater. So that's why it got best sweater. But then on the back of that card, it only said, I don't know, beautiful stitching, lovely cable work, or something like that. And there was nothing negative. And I would have liked to know what they saw in it that wasn't so great. And the other item that got a special prize was my tree skirt that I made, and that got best Christmas item. So that was exciting. I love entering things into the county fair. It's so much fun. Do you have a favorite yarn base? I guess I would just say fingering weight in general. I like both 75-25 yarn because it is perfect for socks. I also like 100% wool. I use that a lot in garments and color work, like I've mentioned. But I do really enjoy fingering weight, not only for the reason that I love fingering weight projects, but you can also double it up and get thicker weights if needed. So, do I have a technique recommendation for casting on? I typically cast on using the German twisted cast on method. Holding yarn, I use the continental style. I wrap it around my pinky finger and my pointer finger. And weaving in ends, I don't have any special technique. I just weave it in, like I kind of split my stitches on the wrong side and weave it in kind of back and forth, and I do it several times and kind of go back on itself so that it is secure. If you could only knit with one yarn weight, what and why? Oh, I already answered that, I think. Fingering, just because it's a lot more versatile, I think. Will you be buying a yarn advent calendar, and what would you make with it? I don't think I will be. I've looked at several, but they are just understandably very expensive, and I just can't justify spending that much money on a yarn advent calendar just because I don't know. I just don't think it's necessary. I don't know. I guess I'm just a bit more frugal, and I don't know. I just don't plan on spending that much money on an advent calendar. Having 5 kids, I just don't have a ton of extra money I don't work outside of the home, and so, you know, I don't have a ton of extra money to spend on things that are not necessary. So I spend enough on yarn as it is. Do you have a best friend, and does she knit? I would definitely say that Tina is my best friend, and yes, she does knit. Love you, Tina. How do you wash the baskets you get from thrift stores? So yes, I do get several baskets from thrift stores. Here is one of them. Isn't that pretty? That's what I'm keeping my scraps in that I have left over from my Hexie blanket before I put them into a ball to add. Here's all my tiny little pieces that I add to my granny stripe blanket, which is also in here. But anyway, I do get several baskets from thrift stores. I like keeping my projects in them, and the way that I wash them is I just fill up my bathtub with lukewarm water, and I just use dish soap, and I let them sit in there and soak for a while, and then I just spray them down. When I'm done, after they've soaked for a while, I spray them down, and then I put them outside to dry. Super simple. Okay, now I've got a few questions about sewing. Who taught you to sew? My mom taught me to sew. She is a great sewist. She loves to make doll clothes, so she is really good at super intricate work. And yeah, she taught me how to sew when I was a little girl. Do you intend to make quilts for your children? I don't know. I made my first quilt a year ago in August. I really loved the process, but I have a tendency with sewing to kind of go in spurts of enjoying it, and then for the majority of the time, I don't really enjoy it. So maybe I'm a little doubtful that I'll make a quilt for each of my children, but it's possible. They're still fairly young, so I have a few more years. Are you planning to make another bed quilt? I have another bed quilt, and that's the next one. Did you ever finish your patchwork quilt? So I have a patchwork quilt that is autumn themed, and I started that almost a year ago, back in September, and it's been on hold for several months because I have all of the piecing done, and all I have left to do is the quilting. I pulled it back out again because I really want to use it this fall. It is fall themed. I made a king size quilt, and I've made 2 pillow shams. So here is one of the pillow shams. I had thought about getting it professionally quilted, but it's going to cost over $200 to get that done, and here we go again. I'm just not really willing to spend that much money, and so I've decided just to quilt it myself. So I finished the quilting on this one. I think this is what I'm going to do. Don't look too closely. I'm not a great sewist. My lines aren't perfect. I'm a little bit concerned about the spacing because this block is, I don't know what the dimensions, but probably 5 by 5, I would guess. And I probably should quilt down the center of that to make it, I think I've heard that you're supposed to quilt about every 2 inches to make it that's probably the best idea for a quilt, but I think I'm just going to do it like this. I think it's going to be good enough. So that's my plan. So I've just done straight lines. I've kind of done I tried doing stitching in the ditch, which means you stitch right on the seam, and I couldn't make that look very pretty. So I've just gone a little bit off of the seam in a fairly straight line. So maybe you can see better on the back the lines I've made. But anyway, I am hoping to focus on this set, this quilt and pillow shams, and get those done. I would love to have the quilt on my bed in September sometime. So we'll see if I can stay focused on that. Okay, we're going at a long time, but I do have a few more questions. Okay, did I get through all of those? I feel like I missed some, but no, I don't think I did. Okay, the next questions are on yarn dyeing. Another very popular question, and I'm so very grateful for everybody that likes my hand-dyed yarn. Many people asked, are you ever thinking of opening your yarn dyeing business again? And it's not out of the question, but it's not in the near future either. I stopped dyeing yarn, which I think is another question here, because it caused a lot of back pain for me. It is quite a labor-intensive process, and you do need to be on your feet a lot, and it just kills my back. It hurts my back so badly. So that was the main reason why I stopped dyeing yarn, and it's not out of the question. I may do small batches in the future, but I don't have any plans for that right now. The winner of the giveaway is one of the ladies that asked that question. I showed this off last time, but this is a project bag that I made myself, and included are 3 skeins of yarn from a homespun house, a knitting jewelry necklace that has lots of stitch markers on it, and a cute little tape measure. And the winner of this prize is Denise Lawrence. Congratulations, Denise. Thank you so much for entering this giveaway. I'm so happy that you won. If you can please get in contact with me through my email at noblecharactercrafts@yahoo.com and let me know your email or your mailing address. I will be so happy to get this off in the mail to you as soon as possible. Do you miss dyeing yarn? I don't really miss it because I still am dyeing yarn for myself whenever I need a project. With my own hand-dyed yarn, I still knit with a lot of my own hand-dyed yarn and still do dye yarn for myself. So I do not miss dyeing in a large scale just because, like I said, it was a lot of hard work and caused me pain. So no, I don't really miss it at such a large scale. Do you have a lot of your dyed yarns on hand? If not, is it kind of sad? I have several. I have lots of, I have enough, and again, I can dye all of my own yarn anytime I want. I saved all of my recipes, so no, it doesn't make me sad because I know I can dye yarn whenever I want to. I still have quite a bit of bare yarn on hand, and of course it's easy to buy more if I need to, so no, that is not a problem. What made you decide to start dyeing yarn? I started dyeing yarn just because I was curious about it. Also because I am frugal and I wanted to make hand-dyed yarn a little bit less expensively. So yeah, I think that was why I looked at hand-dyed yarn online and saw that it was so highly priced, and I thought, well, I want to try it on my own. And I already answered why I stopped dyeing yarn. That was the last question. So those are all of the questions I'm going to cover for today. I think that's plenty. This episode is a little longer than normal, but I hope that you enjoyed it. We have had kind of a rough week. My precious puppy dog of 11 and a half years had to be put down yesterday. Here's a picture of her. She was a beautiful Sheltie. Her name was Ruby. You've probably seen her on the podcast a few times. At the beginning, I've shown little clips of her every once in a while over the years. So she was just the best dog ever, but she got super sick this last week, and she had to be put down, unfortunately. So that was super, super sad yesterday, but I know that she's not in pain anymore, so I knew that was probably the best decision for her, but it was super sad to see her go. And the kids it was really hard for the kids because she's as old as my oldest child, and so they've never known not having her around. So that was really hard. So anyway, but other than that, we have had a good couple of weeks. Like I said, the weather's been super hot, and I am anxious for autumn to come. I hate the hot weather. But anyway, we've been doing well. I hope you all have been doing well as well, and I really appreciate you joining me for this special 100th episode, and I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please feel free to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I would appreciate that so much. Thanks again for watching. Bye.